Hello, fellow Gnostic sex cultists. Happy Wednesday. I hope you guys are doing well. Welcome to The Cult. The Cult is a show that I stream Monday through Friday on this here YouTube channel on X, normally on Rumble as well, but I just spent 10 minutes trying to set up the Rumble feed, so I'm sorry that I'm late, but I was only planning on being like 5 minutes late, and then Rumble broke, and Rumble wouldn't set up my feed, and I kept waiting. My mic is echoing. Hang on. Stand by. I know what the problem is. Is that better? Do you know what that was? My settings were changed from my settings were changed from our spy stream earlier. And so I just had to change the settings back. Anyway, Rumble is broken. It's not my fault. I tried to set up a stream on Rumble. It's broken. It's not setting up live streams. So today we are only streaming on YouTube and X, but normally I do stream on Rumble as well. But it's not my fault Rumble can't get its act together. What can I do? Anyway, guys, we had a really fun-filled morning, I have to say. A bunch of us spent about 3 hours this morning in a queer liberation conference, and if you weren't able to make it, like, they did say the quiet part out loud, and I may or may not have provoked them to talk about capitalism, as they were trying to tell me that I'm obligated to use someone's pronouns. We saw well, I won't tell you what we've seen yet. I won't tell you yet what we saw, but we did see some good stuff. And we are going to be returning to Spy Stream tomorrow. So if you missed out on this morning's Spy Stream, you can actually still catch it on demand. All you need to do is head over to the Substack, which of course is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. Click on this day one post, and underneath this red box, you are going to find the links to the on-demand recordings on YouTube and on Rumble, because Rumble was working this morning. It's just not working now. And so the on-demand recordings are up, and we're going to be going back in for a day 2 tomorrow, because day 2 is going to get started around 11:30 in the morning. It's going to run till about 4 p.m. in the afternoon. We've got 3 more presentations to watch. This is a multi-day spy stream. It is for supporters only. So if you want to join us and go inside a live queer liberation training that's funded by the taxpayer to the tune of like $10 million, we heard in this training today. Not that the entire 10 million is going towards this event, but apparently the state that we are watching this training in allocated $10 million to these types of initiatives. They talked about it in the training. So the taxpayers of some mystery state that may or may not be California is allocating literally millions of dollars to doing queer liberation training on the taxpayer dime, and that's what we're watching right now. And so we will be going back inside of it tomorrow. I do hope that you guys will be able to join us. Hopefully I will be making some clips of that, but there's a lot of stuff that's going on, guys. And I just want to do a quick recap before we get to today's stream. And I'm thinking, I know I've been doing like all these late night streams lately. There's so much content that needs to be covered. Last night we streamed like half of this Project Veritas thing. I do want to go back to that. Are you covered under join? I don't know what that means, Annie, but if you can let me know, that would be great. So I do want to go back to that Project Veritas thing at some point, but I was actually thinking that tonight it might be an interesting idea to go back and watch a documentary about Kent State. And I don't know, like, you know, a lot of people kind of know generally what happened to Kent State. There were mass protests in the 60s over Vietnam, and they brought out the National Guard and they shot 4 people, and it was a tragic thing, and it sparked off nationwide protests. But I've been thinking about this, and I really think, and I don't think that this is that much of a stretch, I think the students at Columbia are trying to make Kent State happen again. And wouldn't you know it, but do you guys know the date that Kent State happened on? Does anyone remember? Oh, we know because Murphy's Pool looked it up. May 4th. May 4th. So I told you guys the other day that we need to watch out for May Day. May Day is May 1st. And May Day is one of those days on the socialist calendar that is like, May Day is representative of the revolution, okay? And so I've been telling people, don't go to major cities on May Day, which is May 1st. That's next Wednesday. That's a week from today is May 1st. because I think something's going to happen on May 1st. But what I didn't realize was that Kent State was on May 4th. May 4th is a Saturday. May 4th is going to be, well, an easy day for a lot of nonsense to happen. And I really do think that the students at Columbia are trying to provoke such nonsense. Like conservatives, I mean, I know I rag on conservatives a lot, and people give me and there are some conservatives who don't like this, but the reality is that conservatives are being so stupid about this. I'm sorry. The responses that I've been seeing from conservative media, from conservative influencers, all of their audiences that are cheering this stuff on, conservative influencers are cheering for the cops to beat up the students. Literally earlier today, a major conservative influencer, and I'm not going to say who it is because I don't want to give this person any additional like attention, but they posted a video. They posted, which video was it? Dibba 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 not that one, not that one. This one. So cops at the University of Southern California are like brandishing their baton against students protesting at the University of Southern California. And there's this big time conservative influencer that has like over 1 million followers that put together an edited clip of this specifically. And he was like, look, the students fucked around and they found out. And I was like, I replied to him and I was like, you morons, the students want you to beat them up. The students want this. The students want to be martyred. And of course, he blocked me because conservatives are a bunch of fucking snowflakes who only want to be told lies and who only want to hear their talking points over and over and over and over and over again. And they don't want to be told the truth, which is that the students, not that one, are trying to provoke another Kent State. And conservatives don't understand this because they can't imagine anyone having strongly held convictions because conservatives themselves, for the most part, do not have strongly held convictions. But these kids do. The ones at Columbia, the ones that are protesting now on like Harvard, USC, University of Texas at Austin, University of Michigan, Tufts, like all like I think University of North Carolina, Rice University. There are these encampments that are popping up all over the place now. And what the right is not wrapping their heads around, well, first of all, the right still thinks this is all anti-Semitism, which is garbage. The students don't care if people are Jewish. In fact, there are Jewish groups that are literally holding like Shabbat dinners and like I don't know other Jewish things and Jewish activities. I don't know the names of any of these things, sorry. But like there are Jewish groups that are on these encampments that are doing Jewish things and no one's actually bothering them. The Jews that the protesters are getting aggressive towards are the ones that are going into the protests specifically to agitate them. So it's just kind of like with the with when the right thinks that everything's about skin color, right? Where they think like, they're just trying to destroy all white men and they just love all black people. Well, no. The left does not love all black people and the left does not hate all white people. The left loves black people who agree with them. The left hates black people who disagree with them. The left loves white people who agree with them. The left hates white people who disagree with them. So it has nothing to do about skin color. It has to do with the ideology. And the same is true when it comes to the Jewish question. Aha, pun intended. The left doesn't care if people are Jewish. This is not about anti-Semitism. This is about capitalism. This is about the students on campus believing that Israel represents the evil settler colonists who privatized indigenous land and the Palestinians represent the glorious Marxist revolution that is going to overthrow capitalism. The left does not hate Jewish people. This is not about anti-Semitism. The left loves Jewish people who agree with them. And we saw that yesterday when there was a student press conference at Columbia where they had Jewish people saying, I'm in favor of the protests for reasons X, Y, B, and Z. They highlighted them. Now, the right is going to go, those are all self-hating Jews. Well, you know what, guys? That sounds retarded. That sounds as retarded as when the left says, those are all self-hating gays that don't want us to trans the kids. And it's just like, you can't even tell the difference between these two tribes anymore. My point is this, is that the right doesn't understand what's going on at all. The left is trying to provoke a nationwide protest, and the left is not afraid to die for their beliefs. This is the point that I'm making. The left, there are people in all of these protests, in all of these student protests, that are completely unafraid to die for their beliefs. They want to be martyrs. They want someone to get shot. They want the police to beat someone up. They want something to happen because it only takes one, guys. It takes one. It takes one incident at one of these college protests, and Columbia would really, really like it to be them. Columbia is trying so hard to make sure that they are the ones that are hosting the martyr, but it could be any of them. It doesn't really matter. It takes one police officer beating the shit out of a student. It takes one police officer or National Guard member pulling a gun and shooting someone. It takes one incident. And you think it's bad now? That one incident is going to be the spark that explodes the summer of love upon us. They are dying for this to happen. And we kind of saw this last night at Columbia. Last night at Columbia, for those who weren't following along, essentially the students are in negotiation with the administration. And of course, there's no list of demands that the administration can ever meet to make this go away. Everyone knows that, right? The negotiations are a farce. This is the point. The point is the spectacle. There's no amount of demands that maybe if they fully divested from Israel, maybe that could do it. But even then, once they fully divest from Israel, there's going to be more demands after that. And we all know this university is not going to fully divest from Israel. That's not going to happen. That would have a whole other set of consequences to it. But we saw this last night because the students are in negotiation with the administration, and it was supposed to end at midnight. And then probably about an hour before midnight, what happened is news leaked that Columbia was going to call out the National Guard on these students. You now have the Kent State martyrdom. There was nothing that these students wanted more than for the National Guard to be called out. And what did the students do? Immediately upon hearing that Columbia was going to call the National Guard on them, they started rallying. They put out calls through all these different groups that are facilitating these protests, including socialist groups that I'm the only one that's covered on the internet, like the Party for Socialism and Liberation, which James Lindsay has never heard of, Z Van Fleet has never heard of. In fact, like when I tried to spread the word about the Party for Socialism of Liberation back in November, saying that they were going to support protests that would dwarf 2020. I put that clip out on the internet last November. No one paid attention to it. James Lindsay didn't think it was a big deal. Some fucking prophet he is. Anyway, so the students, once they heard that the National Guard was going to get called out, started putting out all these calls in New York saying, everyone come to Columbia. We have to defend the encampment. And then the crowd at Columbia swelled to over 1,000 people. Look at this crowd. This was last night at midnight. Look at this. And so there are also these videos of like these cops showing up at Columbia, and they were bussing in these cops. There was like a little line of like I guess riot cops outside of Columbia, because I guess they were going to try to do something to clear the campus at midnight. And I was looking at the videos of like this line of cops and the protesters and the students dwarfing that line of cops by like 10 times. And I was like, bro, you guys aren't doing anything to break up this protest. And sure enough, the deadline was extended to 8 a.m. And I got up early today because we had to do the spy stream. And as soon as I got up, I was like, okay, what happened to that 8 a.m. deadline at Columbia? Guess what? They've now extended it another 48 hours. So I think, the students are in control of this. And I want to play this video for everyone from last night. And listen, I just think this is kind of funny. I mentioned this on the spy stream earlier, but not everyone was on my spy stream earlier. I think this is kind of funny that the longer the protests go on, the more Muslim these students are looking. Like, and most of these students are not Muslim. Most of these students are not Middle Eastern, okay? But like the longer the group kind of like is together in this experience, they're forming into a collective and they're all turning Muslim. Look at the like as the camera pans around, we're going to listen to this clip. And by the way, they're called comrades in this clip because, of course, the goal is not anything to do with the Jews. The goal is to overthrow capitalism. Comrade is a signifier that you are a member of the party. You are a member of the far left party. They do really call people that. But like, look at the crowd as the video pans around. All of them are turning Muslim. It's actually crazy. They're collectivizing. They're forming into the collective. Anyway, let me set the sound up and I want you to hear this.
But we will know, because of that, in advance of an imminent sweep. We are entering a period of high alert for the next 3 days. And that is why I urge all of you to talk to your friends as well and let them know that we may need people to turn up quickly, en masse, in front of the encampment to defend the encampment. Will you be ready to rally for your comrades? We are so close to divestment. In the chain of complicity, all the universities will.
So that's that. All the students are turning into Muslim, whether they're Muslim or not. That's interesting. I've got a couple other things I wanted to show you guys about the protest, guys, before we get into our main program. Now, I just basically want to go through some of the other things that are going on. This is going to be rather quick. You can find a lot of this stuff on my Twitter if you want. We've already talked about how this is they're trying to create another Kent State. Oh, I just want to point this out. You know, a lot of James Lindsay's fans have been giving me grief the last couple of days because James Lindsay is being a troll on Twitter and actively trying to discredit my work. Well, at the same time, James Lindsay is not actually being productive in this regard. So people who might be new to me, if you're wondering about the difference between my work and James Lindsay's work, I feel like it can be encapsulated in what we're seeing right now. Whereas James Lindsay is going to say the campus protests are part of a Gnostic sex cult, United Nations, Oprah, law of attraction, globalist agenda. In fact, that's pretty much what James Lindsay is saying about this in so many words. Whereas my perspective on this is that the campus protests are trying to recreate Kent State to start a nationwide mass unrest. And if there's, I just think that that's a really good differentiator. If you want insane conspiracy theories about Gnostic cults that have no basis in reality and have no practical application at all, James Lindsay's your guy, yo. He really is. But if you want practical on the ground, here is what's going on and here is why it's happening, then you're going to come here. Tim Pool just tweeted, the media attention will ignite. Well, yeah, this is true too. Someone asked me earlier on Twitter, they were like, well, Carlin, what would you do? And I said, well, I would just have ignored them. But at this point, it's actually too late. There's nothing they can do at this point. There's nothing they can do. Well, yes, Jessica, that's exactly the point. I am doing something useful, and James Lindsay is not doing anything useful except saying, stop hiring college graduates. That's James Lindsay's prediction. So again, if you want him pontificating about his Gnostic sex cult, United Nations, Oprah, law of attraction, conspiracy theory, yo, he is I will say this. James Lindsay is the best guy on the internet for that, yo. Best guy on the internet for the Gnostic sex cult, Oprah, law of attraction, United Nations conspiracy theory. But I think that some people want things that are a little bit more practical. That's my point. Anyway, moving on. So Harvard has now set up their own encampment, and people were surprised that this didn't happen earlier. And quite frankly, I was a little surprised as well that Harvard did not have an encampment set up. And I'm a little disappointed too, because I was thinking about going down to Boston on Friday to kind of go around to some of the colleges. Like I know Tufts has one set up, Emerson has one set up, Harvard, MIT. But Harvard has now closed Harvard Yard to anyone that's not a student. So I don't even know if I would be able to get into Harvard to be able to go see it. They say it's going to open back up on Friday afternoon, so maybe I could go later in the day. We'll see. But Harvard has had a mass protest this morning about the whole Palestinian thing, and actually suspended the students. Breaking: Harvard has set up an encampment for Gaza despite Harvard's many attempts to intimidate students from participating. Harvard suspended students from the Palestinian Solidarity Committee and restricted access to Harvard Yard in anticipation. Well, for everyone that's saying, suspend the students, expel the students, did suspending the students stop it? No. Did restricting access to Harvard Yard stop it? No. Like, I'm sorry, but this is ridiculous at this point. Like, like what needed to happen is the students needed to be allowed to protest. There is a First Amendment in this country. The students should have been allowed to protest, but all of these efforts to stop the students from protesting because they're anti-Semitic, anti-Semitic, anti-Semitic. All of these efforts to stop the students from protesting has just made the situation worse. So we'll see. Harvard's getting that set up. I showed you this video from USC earlier. USC is calling out the cops who are beating up students. This is going to bode real well for everyone. In Texas has called out the riot police, and even Texas has also called out the riot horses. Hang on, you're going to see a riot horse. There it is. They're using police horses on the students. What could possibly go wrong there? And now it seems there are calls from Congress that the president of Colombia needs to resign. So that's going on. And even, let's take a quick look at this. Even Mike Johnson actually made an appearance at Colombia today. The feckless Speaker of the House, who just sent Ukraine another $60 billion of our money, and Israel $30 billion of our money, as though Israel needed any more of our money. Mike Johnson, along with many members of Congress, made this appearance at Columbia earlier today.
This kind of hatred and anti-Semitism to flourish on our campuses, and it must be stopped in its tracks. Those who are perpetrating this violence should be arrested. And I'm here today joining my colleagues and calling on President Shafiq to resign if she cannot immediately bring order to this chaos. As Speaker of the House, I am committing today that the Congress will not be silent as Jewish students are expected to run for their lives and stay home from their classes hiding in fear.
Yep, it's all about the Jewish students, isn't it? All about the Jewish students. Well, do you guys want to see how well this turned out? Let's see how the students at Columbia responded to Mike Johnson. It went as well as you can expect.
Mike, you suck! 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 Mike, you.
I'm just saying that, you might not agree with the students at Columbia on everything, but I think that this is a sentiment we can all get behind, right? Can we just can we put our differences aside for a second? And can we just all come together and agree that Mike Johnson does suck? Mike Johnson never should have been elected Speaker of the House in the first place. It always should have been Jim Jordan. If Jim Jordan had been elected Speaker of the House, none of this bullshit would be happening right now. If Jim Jordan had been elected Speaker of the House, we wouldn't be giving another $60 billion to Ukraine. If Jim Jordan had been elected Speaker of the House, they wouldn't have given another $30 billion to Israel. Why wasn't Jim Jordan elected Speaker of the House? Because of Republicans. Because of feckless goddamn Republicans. And I'm going to say, I like to pat myself on the back when I'm right, which is pretty often and frequent. I told conservatives 2 years ago, I told them before this, but I emphasized it around the 2022 midterms. I said, stop voting for horrible candidates. Stop voting for horrible Republicans. Stop voting for horrible candidates. Stop voting for horrible Republicans. And when I said, stop voting for horrible candidates, conservatives went, but that's the same as voting for a Democrat. And so we have to vote for whatever Republican they give us, because if we don't, we're voting for a Democrat. And I was like, bro, you're voting for a Democrat anyway. You're literally voting for Democrats. You are literally voting to be bent over and fucked by your own party conservatives. So please. Now, I think there's no chance that the right is winning in 2024. And maybe that would be, and I could be wrong. I would be thrilled to be wrong. I really would be. But can we please all remove our heads from our asses and understand that when you vote for horrible Republicans, it is no different than voting for Democrats. And the only way that the Republican Party is going to stop putting up these horrible Republicans that will bend you over and fuck you every single day of the week to be able to suck the dick of Israel, you're getting what you deserve, man. You're getting what you deserve. The only way to change the Republican Party is to stop voting for horrible candidates. And might you lose in the short term? Yeah, you're going to lose in the short term. Guess what? That is the bed that you made by spending so many decades of your life voting for horrible candidates. That's the price you pay for creating this problem in the first place by voting for people you never should have voted for. The only way to fix the problem is to take the hit, understand that you're going to lose, but the end result on the other side is that you will get better candidates. Every single person who refused to make Jim Jordan, I was confusing Mike Johnson and Jim Jordan in my head. God, bleh. Every single Republican who refused to vote for Jim Jordan as Speaker of the House should be summarily booted from that position, and it shouldn't even be a discussion. It should be a one-vote issue. Did you support Jim Jordan or didn't you? Did you put Mike Johnson in front of Jim Jordan or didn't you? That should be the issue that you're voting on. I'm sorry. That's how I feel about it. Anyway, my dogs are barking for some reason. I hope you guys can hear that. My chihuahua is having feelings right now. My husband is taking a nap, so he's not going to stop them. So hopefully that goes away soon. Anyway, I want to show you guys what we're doing today. So this is something that was sent from Human Centipede. And Human Centipede is like our secret weapon. Human Centipede is the one that found the Mary Nardini gang stuff for us. And he sent me this and he said, Carlin, you need to listen to this. And he explained why. And he says it's highly, highly relevant to the college protests. This is another thing from the Anarchist library. It's called Communicate from an Absent Future, the Terminus of Student Life. And Human Centipede swears on whatever he believes in that this is highly relevant to what's going on campus. And I believe him because he does a pretty good job. He sends me really interesting stuff that we should listen to. And so I thought that we could listen to this. It's about half an hour long and it's like an audiobook sort of thing. So they're reading essentially the text, but this is something we can break down and analyze and talk about. So this is going to give us more information on the perspective of students who are protesting right now. And it's one of those things. It's an obscure thing that might give us insight, like to be able to frame our reference about what's happening right now. So I want to listen to this. And then later, again, I don't think we'll do it in this stream. I think what I would do is stop this stream and start a new stream. But I think I want to watch something about Kent State later. And again, I might take a little bit of a break. Maybe we'll do it a little bit later tonight. But like this is like an hour and a half documentary about Kent State. I can look around for some other documentaries as well. But I really think it will benefit us to kind of brush up on Kent State because it's been a while for me, man. Like I think the last time I even learned about Kent State was in a college history class that I took, and because I took history, I had a very woke professor in college that taught history, and I loved him at the time, of course. But like even now, I'm kind of like going back and I'm like, what did I actually learn? But that was really the last time I thought about Kent State when I was taking U.S. history in college. And so I want to go back and kind of brush up about that, but we're probably not going to do that in this stream. What I'm probably going to do is we're going to listen to this thing that Human Centipede said, and we're going to talk about it. Then I'm going to take just a little break and then, look around for other Kent State stuff, and we'll come back later and do that. Does that sound good to everyone? And hopefully Rumble will be up at that time so I can start the stream on there, but that's what I'm thinking. Anyway, Guys, if you want to help me out and support the work I'm doing and get access to the spy stream we're doing tomorrow, again, head over to my Substack, Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. Sign up for $8 a month, $80 a year. I cannot do this without your support. So if you appreciate what I'm doing in terms of taking you inside leftist training, breaking it down, making clips for you guys that you can share out so we can show people what's actually going on in these trainings, like doing articles and essays and podcasts where I'm breaking down the woke left ideology. I'm going to be having something going up explaining queers for Palestine and why that's a thing, because that's becoming relevant again and not enough people understand that. I'm going to have other things going up about the protests. We're going to be doing really heavy coverage of the protests until they stop, which could conceivably be months from now. I guess we'll have to see. But you can follow all of that along over on my Substack. You can sign up for free email updates, and please do that at least. Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. And again, if you want to support the work I'm doing and you get access to exclusive perks like our spy stream, like the Zoom calls that we do, like the supporter Discord. By the way, we're doing a Hunger Games double feature in the supporter Discord this weekend. We do movie nights at 8 p.m. Eastern time on Sundays, but we're watching Hunger Games 1 and 2 in the supporter Discord this weekend, and we're going to be starting at 6 p.m. Eastern. So 2 hours early, okay? So I just want to make sure, like, I make that announcement. That's part of the supporter perks. And again, I really do appreciate it, guys. Now, please make sure you mount the like button for me. Please make sure to double check that you are subscribed on YouTube if you are not already. Yeah, there was a spy stream earlier today, Milo, but we're doing part 2 tomorrow. But you can access the on-demand stuff now. All right, guys, let's get this party started. We are listening to Communique from an Absent Future, the terminus of student life. And this is to give us some more insight into the philosophy behind the student protests.
Communique from an Absent Future, the terminus of student life. Research and Destroy. An audio zine recorded by Sen Naomi Kirschultz. Like the society to which it has played the faithful servant, the university is bankrupt. This bankruptcy is not only financial, it is the index of a more fundamental insolvency, one both political and economic, which has been a long time in the making.
Oh, I can see where this is going.
No one knows what the university is for anymore. We feel this intuitively. Gone is the old project of creating a cultured and educated citizenry. Gone, too, the special advantage the degree holder once held on the job market. These are now fantasies, spectral residues that cling to the poorly maintained halls. Incongruous architecture, the ghosts of vanished ideals, the vista of a dead future.
I apologize. Rottweiler has called me out. Let me turn down my mic a little bit because I think the audio of that is a little soft. So I apologize if I blew anyone's ears out. Now you can all turn up your volume so you can hear it better. I apologize, Rottweiler. I apologize. Rottweiler said, it's such a short-term and surface-level thinking. Conservatives are falling right into the left's. Your real action is the target's reaction. Yeah. Conservatives always take the bait. They always do, inevitably. That sucks. Trendlin, will you be willing to interview? Lars? I don't know. I don't know anything about Lars. Lars is a libertarian running for president. I don't know anything about Lars. So I guess maybe, but I don't know anything about him. Okay. This isn't real. So this is, god damn it, guys. There's a video making the rounds on Twitter interviewing a Columbia protester. No, she isn't a Columbia. Oh, one of the things that I've discovered about the conservative right in the past couple days is they don't know the difference between Columbia University and New York University. Columbia University is a completely different school than NYU. They're in completely different parts of New York City, but I keep seeing conservative journalists and commentators get Columbia confused with NYU, which is a bit concerning. But there's this video going around of like probably filmed by a goddamn conservative that they're talking to someone at the NYU protests, not the Columbia protests, where the protester can't articulate why she's protesting. That's not the reason. Okay. What I keep trying to tell you guys is the reason. What I keep trying to tell you guys is the reason that the students are protesting has nothing to do with Israel and the Jews. It has everything to do with capitalism. So what this video actually says is not what's articulated in this post. What this video actually says is the student doesn't know what NYU is doing in regards to Israel. Because the point of the protest isn't really about anything to do with Israel. It's about abolishing capitalism. It's about advancing Marxism. That is the point of the protests. And in the video, and no one of course picked up on this because no one does this. The woman they interviewed in the video is literally standing next to someone with a sign that says Party for Socialism and Liberation. This is a Party for Socialism and Liberation person. This is a socialist. They're one of the groups that have been pushing these protests for the last week. They post about it on their social media all the time. So no, conservatives, no. That video is not what you're saying it is. That video is someone that is blatantly telling you this has nothing to do with the Jews. This has to do with something else. And P.S., she's standing right next to someone with a Party for Socialism and Liberation sign. You guys have got to get better at this, man. You really do. And listen, I don't want to make you feel bad or anything. I'm not trying to pick on you. I'm just really frustrated with all of the bad takes that I've been seeing on this. And I don't think that's your fault. This is not the fault of like the general public, because what's going on is the influencers are posting these shitty takes because they don't understand what's going on. And then it's confusing people. And I understand why people are confused. From my perspective, it's just extremely frustrating for me when I feel like I'm sitting here going, this isn't about the Jews. And it's like conservatives are like, this is about anti-Semitism. Everyone's anti-Semitic. This is about, and then they post this video of this woman who's like, I don't even know what the university is doing with Israel because she's not from NYU. And it's like, and she's standing right next to a socialist party. And I'm like, what do you idiots think is happening? Like, I've been trying to tell you this. So I'm not trying to pick on you. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I just want to make that very, very clear. Nuritu says, I just started watching. Well, Rumble broke. So Rumble wouldn't set up the stream. I tried for like 10 minutes to get the Rumble stream set up. So yeah, Rumble fucking sucks. Rumble has always sucked. Anyway. What will happen? Conservatives will be blinded by Israel versus Palestine and totally miss the communism that will hit them in the ass. Well, I said this on Twitter yesterday, I think. Like, conservatives will scream about Marxism, 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 Marxism all day, every day. But then these campus protests happen, and this is an actual Marxist revolution. This is an actual Marxist uprising that's happening right in front of them. And do they recognize it as Marxism? No. They go, anti-Semitism, 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 anti-Semitism. It's like, you idiots. This is why I keep saying, guys, so many conservatives think they understand the left. They think they understand the socialists. They have no idea. This is why I harp on learning the language of the left, learning how to speak socialist so damn much. Because if you might think you understand, but until you actually see what's happening on the ground, it's really difficult to identify it if you don't watch the type of content that we watch. And quite frankly, I'm like the only person on the internet showing you this content that I know of. So can we please, can everyone bring a friend to the next stream we do so that we can teach more people how to speak the language? Can we please do that? Can I please get everyone subscribed? Can I please get everyone mounting the like button? Can I please get everyone sharing? Because I'm the only person on the internet showing this type of content, and nothing is going to change until more people learn the language. And I don't know what I can't make people share it. You know what I'm saying? Anyway. Yeah, exactly. We all saw this coming. Rottweiler says, please, conservatives can't even define capitalism. I think James Lindsay or someone close to him defined it as Western values. Guys, capitalism is defined as private property ownership. Your home, your land, your rental properties, your business, your intellectual property, your parental rights, and your individual liberties. If you want more about that, head over to my Substack. Thank you.
These are the remains of the university. Among these remains, most of us are little more than a collection of querulous habits and duties. We go through the motions of our tests and assignments with a kind of thoughtless and immutable obedience propped up by subvocalized resentments. Nothing is interesting, nothing can make itself felt. The world historical with its pageant of catastrophe is no more real than the windows in which it appears. For those whose adolescence was poisoned by the nationalist hysteria following September 11th, public speech is nothing but a series of lies in public space, a place where things might explode, though they never do. Afflicted by the vague desire for something to happen without ever imagining we could make it happen ourselves, we were rescued by the bland homogeneity of the internet, finding refuge among friends we never see, whose entire existence is a series of exclamations and silly pictures.
So I want to note, this was I think written in 2009. 2009, 2010 was a turning point in the strategy of the left, because from basically the 30s up until 2008, 2009, 2010, that was the long march through the institutions. Okay? So, so I'm pointing this out because this time period is particularly informative. The long march through the institutions started when the Frankfurt School came and set up shop at Columbia University right before World War II, and proceeded for decades up until 2008, 2009, 2010, around that time. That's when the long march ended, and they captured the institutions, the universities, the teachers' colleges, K through 12 schools, all the major, media and entertainment and all these things. Once they captured all of those environments, they moved into the next phase, which was proactively destabilizing the system. This is where you saw Occupy Wall Street come up. This is where we saw equity departments starting to be created in every school district across the country. Equity is code for Marxism. Anytime you see an equity department, that's the delivery mechanism for Marxism. And we started seeing all this stuff on college campuses start to come up, in which the students were struggle sessioning the professors and all that. All of that is designed intentionally to destabilize society. What happens when they destabilize things is it causes normal people problems. It causes them pain. And then when normal people go, hey, things really suck right now, then the left comes in and they say, do you know why they suck? Because of capitalism. Capitalism created all the world's problems. We saw this on the spy stream I did earlier today. I actually provoked the presenters on the spy stream to flat out say capitalism caused all the world's problems. And I'll have a clip of that at some point. And so why they're doing that, they want to convince normal people that capitalism, which is defined as private property ownership, is the source of all their pain, is the source of all the problems in the world. Because you cannot have a Marxist revolution in this country until you destabilize the public trust in the economic system, which is capitalism. And again, what capitalism is, as defined by the left, is private property ownership. We're not talking about corrupt capitalism. We're not talking about crony capitalism. I'm not suggesting those things aren't problems, but they're problems that you have to take and put over here for a second, because those things are not relevant to what the left is doing. What they mean by capitalism is your ability to own a home, your ability to own land, your ability to own a business, your ability to own rental properties, your ability to own your intellectual property, your parental rights. They specifically define parental rights as a form of private property they want to abolish. That's why you're seeing all the attacks on parental rights. And your individual liberties are considered to be a form of private property. That's what we're talking about. The left cannot have their Marxist revolution unless they destroy the public faith in capitalism by destabilizing the system and then blaming all the problems that they themselves cause on capitalism, so people start to mistrust it. And then they go, how about we do Marxism? How about we try that? Capitalism sucked. It failed us. How about we try Marxism? That's what the left is doing. That is the point of all of this. And I just wanted to point that out because the long march through the institutions ended around the time that this document was written, and they were moving into the destabilization phase.
His only discourse is the gossip of commodities. Safety, then, and comfort have been our watchwords. We slide through the flesh world without being touched or moved by it. We shepherd our emptiness from place to place.
This is what
But we can be
happens.
grateful for our destitution. Demystification is now a condition, not a project. University life finally appears as just what it always has been, a machine for producing compliant producers and consumers.
That means capitalism.
Even leisure is a form of job training. The idiot crew of the frat houses drink themselves into a stupor with all the dedication of lawyers working late at the office. Kids who smoked weed and cut class in high school now pop Adderall and get to work. We power the diploma factory on the treadmills in the gym. We run tirelessly in elliptical circles. It makes little sense, then, to think of the university as an ivory tower in Arcadia, as either idyllic or idle. Work hard, play hard has been the over-ego motto of a generation in training for...
So I just want to point out that this document already seems to be like tearing down the legitimacy of universities. So we were watching the Columbia University live stream earlier, or not earlier today, but like a couple days ago. And they were interviewing one of the protesters, one of like the organizers of the protests. And he's a weird guy, man. He's like one of those charismatic cult leader guys where we need to find out this kid's name because it's like, you know, this kid's going to be a problem in the future, but he's got that like charismatic cult leader vibe to him. And it's like, you know, that. And anyway, so they were interviewing him. He's one of the lead organizers of the whole protesting effort at Columbia. He called Columbia an illegitimate university. So the students that are protesting right now do not acknowledge the legitimacy of the university. And that seems to be aligned with what we're already hearing in this. Yeah, he's like Charles Manson and Jim Jones. Well, no, what happened is I slept with someone who looked exactly like him when I was in college, and I was having a moment. Okay, I was having flashbacks. I was questioning my life choices. That's what happened. All right.
For what? Drawing hearts in cappuccino foam or plugging names and numbers into databases. The gleaming techno-future of American capitalism has long ago packed up and been sold to China for...
What's that? What's that? What did they say about American capitalism? Hang on, we were talking about someone I slept with in college and we all got distracted. Hang on.
Drawing hearts in cappuccino foam or plugging names and numbers into databases. The gleaming techno-future of American capitalism has long ago packed up and been sold to China for
Bing.
a few more years of borrowed junk. A university diploma is now worth no more than a share in General Motors. We work and we borrow in order to work and to borrow, and the jobs we work toward are the jobs we already have. Close to 3/4 of students work while in school, many full-time for most. The level of employment we obtain while students is the same that awaits after graduation as well. Meanwhile, what we acquire isn't education, it's debt. We work to make money we have already spent, and our future labor has already been sold on the worst market around. Average student loan debt rose 20% in the first 5
That's
years of the
actually not
21st
wrong.
century, 80 to 100% for students of color. Student loan volume, a figure inversely proportional to state funding for education, rose by nearly 800% from 1977 to 2003. What our borrowed tuition buys is the privilege of making monthly payments for the rest of our lives. What we learn is the choreography of credit. You can't walk to class without being offered another piece of plastic charging 20% interest. Yesterday's finance majors buy their summer homes with the bleak futures of today's humanities majors. This is the prospect for which we have been preparing since grade school. Those of us who came here to have our privilege notarized surrendered our youth to a barrage of tutors, a battery of psychological tests, obligatory public service ops, the cynical compilation of half-truths towards a well-rounded application profile. No wonder we set about destroying ourselves the second we escaped the cattle prod of parental admonition. On the other hand, those of us who came here to transcend the economic and social disadvantages of our families
Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Gavin McInnes is at Columbia. What could possibly go wrong with Gavin McInnes going to Columbia? Whatever. Can I tell you guys a story about Gavin McInnes? It's just a quick story. I didn't even know. So back in 2020, when I was doing the stuff with Walkaway, so there was the big Walkaway rally in DC that was honestly one of the coolest experiences of my life. I got to give a speech in front of thousands of people right in front of the Washington Monument. It was cool, man. I'm not going to lie. That was cool. But afterwards, we were hanging out at a bar that's like a Proud Boys bar in DC, and I forget the name of it, but it's like this very specific bar that like a lot of the Proud Boys hung out at. And so Gavin McInnes, and I had never met Gavin McInnes, I never talked to Gavin McInnes or any of that. Victor and I are like sitting at this bar having a drink. Gavin McInnes walks into the bar and he looks at me and he comes right over and introduces himself and like shakes my hand. And I was like, holy shit. And that was basically it. But I was like, yo, I was like, what land am I in? Because this is back when I was like the conservative, like golden child, and they were trotting me around everywhere. I was just like, whoa. Anyway, I'm sure he has no idea who I am now because it's been a long time. But that is that's my Gavin McInnes story.
That for every one of us who, quote unquote, makes it, 10 more take our place, that the logic here is zero-sum. And anyway, socioeconomic status remains the best predictor of student achievement. Those of us the demographics call immigrants, minorities, people of color have been told to believe in the aristocracy of merit. But we know we are hated, not despite our achievements, but precisely because of them. And we know that the circuits through which we might free ourselves from the violence of our origins only reproduce the misery of the past in the present for others elsewhere. If the university teaches us primarily how to be in debt, how to waste our labor power, how to fall prey to our petty anxieties, it thereby teaches us how to be consumers. Education is a commodity like everything else that we want without caring for. It is a thing, and it makes its purchasers into things. One's future position in the system, one's relation to others is purchased first with money and then with a demonstration of obedience. First we pay, then we, quote unquote, work hard. And there is the split. One is both the commander and the commanded, consumer and consumed. It is the system itself which one obeys, the cold buildings that enforce
The system is capitalism.
subservience. Those who teach are treated with all the respect of an automated messaging system. Only the logic of consumer satisfaction obtains here. Was the course easy? Was the teacher hot? Could any stupid asshole get an A? What's the point of acquiring knowledge when it can be called up with just a few keystrokes? Who needs memory when we have the internet? A training in thought? You can't be serious. A moral preparation? There are antidepressants for that.
Hang on. I just like how like righteous Milo is, where he's like, McInnes is a Fed, and he's also a Canadian. I like how Canadian and Fed are like on the same level.
Meanwhile, The graduate students, supposedly the most politically enlightened among us, are also the most obedient. The vocation for which they labor is nothing other than a fantasy of falling off the grid or out of the labor market. Every grad student is a would-be Robinson Crusoe dreaming of an island economy subtracted from the exigencies of the market. But this fantasy is itself sustained through an unremitting submission to the market. There is no longer the least felt contradiction in teaching a totalizing critique of capitalism by day and polishing one's job talk by night. That our
Capitalism again.
pleasure is our labor only makes our symptoms more manageable. Aesthetics and politics
Guys, anytime they're talking about labor or the system or consumerism, those are all code words for capitalism.
collapse courtesy of the substitution of ideology for history. Booze and Beaux Arts and another seminar on the question of being, the steady blur of typeface, each pixel paid for by somebody somewhere, someone not me, not here, where all that appears is good and all goods appear attainable by credit. Graduate school is simply the faded remnant of a feudal system adapted to the logic of capitalism, from the
Bing.
commanding heights of the star professors to the serried ranks of teaching assistants.
So graduate school is adopted to so they're basically saying that the university is perpetuating the capitalist system.
And adjuncts paid mostly in bad faith. A kind of monasticism predominates here, with all the Gothic rituals of a Benedictine abbey and all the strange theological claims for the nobility of this work, its essential altruism. The underlings are only too happy to play apprentice to the masters, unable to do the math, indicating that 9/10 of us will teach 4 courses every semester to pad the paychecks of the 1/10 who sustain the fiction that we can all be that one. Of course I will be the star. I will get the tenure track job in a large city and move into the newly gentrified neighborhood. We end up interpreting Marx's 11th thesis on Feuerbach. The philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point is to change it. At best, we learn the phoenix-like skill of coming to the very limits of critique and perishing there, only to begin again at the seemingly ineradicable root. We admire the first part of this performance. It lights our way, but we want the tools to break through that point of suicidal thought, its hinge in practice. The same people who practice quote-unquote critique are also the most susceptible to cynicism. But if cynicism is simply the inverted form of enthusiasm, then beneath every frustrated leftist academic is a latent radical. The shoulder shrug, the dull face, the squirm of embarrassment when discussing the fact that the US murdered 1 million Iraqis.
So I just want to note that they differentiated between leftist and radical. Radical means a revolutionary socialist. In this context, radical can mean other things too, but in this context, if they're saying radical, they mean the furthest of the far left, a revolutionary socialist that wants to overthrow the United States government and raise the red flag of communism above the White House, okay? But what I want you guys to notice is they differentiated between leftist and radical, because leftist in this sense is probably going to be like your typical progressive. For people who might be new that haven't watched socialism with me, you need to understand Democrats are not socialists. I know that conservatives like to say they are, but real socialists, the radicals, the revolutionary socialists, the ones that are doing all this protest stuff, the ones that push critical race theory, the ones that push gender ideology, the ones that are attacking parental rights, real socialists do not view Democrats as socialists. They actually hate the Democrats more than they hate the conservatives because they think that the Democrats are too close to capitalism. They call them neoliberals. Real socialists also don't view the progressives as socialists. Real socialists do not view AOC and Bernie Sanders as socialist. In fact, the Revolutionary Communist of America Party that just launched a couple months ago, they launched in direct opposition to the Democratic Socialists of America because they think the Democratic Socialists are too close to capitalism. There are socialist groups, revolutionary socialist groups, the Boston Revolutionary Socialists specifically, that will not allow their members to be members of the Democratic Socialists of America because they believe the Democratic Socialists of America are too close to capitalism. No. This is a misconception. And people who watch socialist content with me can corroborate this. They hate AOC. They hate Bernie Sanders. They actually view AOC and Bernie Sanders to have betrayed them. They hate AOC and Bernie Sanders way more than they hate conservatives. They don't even really think about conservatives at all. They don't even think about the right. They view them as traitors. They're sellouts. They rail on AOC all the time because they think that AOC has capitulated to capitalism.
Between 2003 and 6, that every last dime squeezed from America's poorest citizens is fed to the banking industry, that the seas will rise inevitably, billions will die, and there is nothing we can do about it. This discomfited posture comes from feeling oneself pulled between the is and the ought of current left thought. One feels that there is no alternative, and yet, on the other hand, that another world is possible. We will not be so petulant, however.
Mary G is asking a good question. Mary G says, do they have differing views on the usefulness of elections? This is a great question because the socialist groups that I've looked into, the revolutionary groups, do not believe that they're going to change anything through the political process. They think that the only way in which they are going to install their Marxist utopia in the United States, and they do want to do it in the United States because we are the symbol of capitalism for the world, is that they do not view that it's going to happen from elections. In fact, there's a group called the Tempest Collective, which is one of the larger radical groups that exist, that they even say in their charter of principles, we are not going to meet our goals through elections. So even the Revolutionary Communists of America that we interviewed on Saturday on the channel, the ones that form that new party, they flat out say they're not forming a political party to run people for office because they don't believe that the electoral process is going to do it. They're forming a political party to give people something to join, to organize the revolution. They're not going to do it through electoral positions. They're going to do it by organizing people through the unions, through workplaces, through college campuses. They tell us how they're going to do this stuff. They have people in all major organizations that are communists. They're kind of like sleeper agents. They're just waiting for the revolution to happen. And so they're using their political party to basically coordinate everything together, but it's not to run candidates. There's going to be a violent revolution at some point. I think it's going to be in 10 to 15 years. I could be wrong, but that's what I think.
The synthesis of these positions is right in front of us. Another world is not possible, it is necessary. The ought and the is are one. The collapse of global economy is here and now. The university has no history of its own. Its history is the history of capital. Its essential function is the reproduction of the relationship between capital and labor.
What? The university has no function on its own. Its history is the history of capital. Ding, ding, ding. Let's listen to that again.
Is here and now. The university has no history of its own. Its history is the history of capital. Its essential function is the reproduction of the relationship between capital and labor.
The essential function of the university is the reproduction of capitalism. So we talk about social reproduction theory a lot. Social reproduction theory is the basis of why the socialist left wants to abolish the nuclear family, because the socialist left quite literally believes that the nuclear family is the production mechanism of capitalism, because the nuclear family is where they literally create the future generation of proletarian workers in the form of having children and raising children in a capitalist society. So the reason they want to abolish the nuclear family is because they believe that they cannot overthrow capitalism and install their Marxist utopia until they abolish the nuclear family. Now, this is also telling us that they believe the universities are the reproduction mechanism of capitalism. Remember, I told you earlier, we watched that interview with one of the lead organizers of the Columbia protests, and in that interview, he literally said that that Columbia University is illegitimate. And probably the reason they think that is because they believe that Columbia University is reproducing capitalism, is perpetuating capitalism. And so the reason you're seeing protests on college campuses where they are questioning the legitimacy of their own institution is because they believe that it's necessary to tear down these institutions in order to tear down capitalism. Does that make sense to everyone? Let's just listen one more time. We're going to let it play.
Here and now. The university has no history of its own. Its history is the history of capital. Its essential function is the reproduction of the relationship between capital and labor. Though not a proper corporation that can be bought and sold, that pays revenue to its investors, the public university nonetheless carries out this function as efficiently as possible by approximating ever more closely the corporate form of its bedfellows. What we are witnessing now is the endgame of this process, whereby the facade of the educational institution gives way altogether to corporate streamlining. Even in the golden age of capitalism that followed after World War II and lasted until the late 1960s, the liberal university was already subordinated to capital. At the apex of public funding for higher education in the 1950s, the university was already being redesigned to produce technocrats with the skill sets necessary to defeat communism and sustain U.S. hegemony. Its role during the Cold War was to legitimate liberal democracy and to reproduce an imaginary society of free and equal citizens, precisely because no one was free and no one was equal.
Why do they believe, pop quiz for the chat, why do they believe that no one was free and no one was equal? This also, by the way, aligns with the whole queers for Palestine thing, where people are so confused about why the left would say queers for Palestine because Muslims don't like gay people. Why did they just say no one was free and no one was equal? What does that mean? Because there was no equity? Because it wasn't socialism? Because capitalism causes inequality? Capitalism oppresses all of us? Capitalism oppresses everyone because it's not equitable. Remember, guys, equity is code for Marxism. Because they think that we're all oppressed under capitalism. Under capitalism, you are limited by your, I don't know what that word is, but you're limited by your wealth. They believe that everyone is a slave to capitalism. The reason the Queers for Palestine thing is a thing, because they believe that queer people and Palestinians are both being oppressed by capitalism. So the ultimate goal, and again, remember, the left believes that the Palestinians are in a glorious revolution against the evil settler colonist capitalist that is Israel. That's why they seem that's why it's not actually anti-Semitic, because it's like Israel is not the only evil capitalist in the world that the left want to overturn. But in this case, Israel is the ones who settled and colonized the land that the Palestinians are on, and that enforced capitalism on the land. And so they believe that the Palestinians are in the glorious revolution to decolonize the land. Decolonization means removing the oppressive force of capitalism. That's why they're doing this. And the queer ideology, queer is not about being gay or trans. Queer is about a far left political ideology. And the goal of queer is to destabilize normativity in order to overthrow capitalism by abolishing the gender binary and the nuclear family. So both of the ideologies, queer and the Palestinian stuff, is about overthrowing capitalism. That's why they're saying queers for Palestine, because they believe that as long as capitalism exists in the world. They want a globalist society. They're not like the WEF, they're different groups, but they want a globalist society because they believe as long as capitalism exists anywhere in the world, we are all slaves to capitalism. That's exactly right. No one is free until everyone is free. What this means is no one is free until everyone is free from capitalism. Lots of other right answers in the chat. Thanks for playing along, guys.
This ideological function of the public university was at least well funded after the Second World War. That situation changed irreversibly in the 1960s, and no amount of social democratic heel-clicking would bring back the dead world of the post-war boom. Between 1965 and 1980, profit rates began to fall, first in the US, then in the rest of the industrializing world. Capitalism, it turned out, could not sustain the good life it made possible. For capital, abundance appears as overproduction, freedom from work as unemployment. Beginning in the 1970s, capitalism entered into a terminal downturn in which permanent work was casualized and working-class wages stagnated, while those at the top were temporarily rewarded for their obscure financial necromancy, which has itself proven unsustainable. For public education, the long downturn meant the decline of tax revenues due to both declining rates of economic growth and the prioritization of tax breaks for beleaguered corporations. The raiding of the public purse struck California and the rest of the nation in the 1970s. It has continued to strike with each downward declension of the business cycle. Though it is not directly beholden to the market, the university and its corollaries are subject to the same cost-cutting logic as others in other industries. Declining tax revenues have made inevitable the casualization of work. Retiring professors make way not for tenure-track jobs, but for precariously employed teaching assistants, adjuncts, and lecturers who do the same work for much, much less pay. Tuition.
Geez, I need to watch your videos on this. As a reminder, guys, I stream about this basically 6 days a week. And so you're welcome to dig into my archives. I have a massive archive of socialist training. You can check out Socialism Saturdays. I just interviewed 2 communists live for Socialism Saturday this past Saturday. We watch socialist, communist, leftist training all the time. So again, Monday through Fridays at 5 p.m. On Saturdays, I go live at 6 p.m. For Socialism Saturday. So you're welcome to drop by. Please make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you want notifications. And also, like, I stream on Rumble, I stream on X, I have my Substack. So yeah, I will break down all of this stuff for you in plain English. I just need you to show up, and I need you to be ready to listen, because we do a lot of listening. And the way that I'm able to predict what's going to happen is because I spend an inordinate amount of hours just listening to the far left. And I'll show you things no one else is going to show you.
Increases compensate for cuts while the job students pay to be trained for evaporate. In the midst of the current crisis, which will be long and protracted, many on the left want to return to the golden age of public education. They naively imagine that the crisis of the present is an opportunity to demand the return of the past. But social programs that depended upon high profit rates and vigorous economic growth are gone. We cannot be tempted to make futile grabs at the irretrievable while ignoring the obvious fact that there can be no autonomous public university in a capitalist society. The university is
There can be no autonomous public university in a capitalist society.
Public university in a capitalist society. The university is subject to the real crisis of capitalism, and capital does not require liberal education programs. The function of the university has always been to reproduce the working class by training future workers according to the changing needs of capital.
So the nuclear family is the birthplace of the future workers. The university is the training ground of the future workers. That's crazy, man. That's crazy. But not surprising. But it's just like, when I say that's crazy, I mean, it's crazy to hear that in such plain language.
Public university in a capitalist society. The university is subject to the real crisis of capitalism, and capital does not require liberal education programs. The function of the university has always been to reproduce the working class by training future workers according to the changing needs of capital. The crisis of the university today is the crisis of the reproduction of the working class, the crisis of a period in which capital no longer needs us as workers.
Did you guys notice? They're opening a people's university on Columbia. Well, okay, like it's not this formal of a thing, but the student protesters at Columbia are opening a people's university in their little protest area. That's a really good point. Well, yeah, and I understood this, Rottweiler. This is why education is also a part of social reproduction alongside the nuclear family. I understood this. My beef with James. Okay, here's where this comes from. We called out James Lindsay on not explaining abolish the family to his audience because the abolish the family movement is where every single attack on parental rights is coming from. Like all of the gender ideology stuff in terms of like there being policies in K through 12 schools where the school isn't allowed to tell parents what's going on with their kids in terms of their pronoun and their gender and stuff like that. All of these attacks on parental rights in terms of the University of Connecticut holding a symposium on if parental rights are in the best interest of the child. It all comes from the abolish the family movement on the socialist left. And so we were haranguing the ever-loving F out of James Lindsay to tell his audience about abolish the family and social reproduction theory because he had never done it. And James responded, I have talked about the problem of reproduction. Well, what James means by that is he mentioned the problem of reproduction like once in his books about a book about the Marxification of education. And he did like one podcast where he had a brief mention of the problem of reproduction. So it's not as though he's not wrong in that education is a part of it. My beef with that is that he wasn't explaining the attacks on parental rights, which are actually more important right now. But what this is giving us is just like, I mean, they're flat out saying the universities are training workers to be good little capitalists. That's what they're saying. And that could go for the K through 12 schools as well. And I just think people need to hear about it more. I think people need to hear about the family stuff. This is my beef. It's not that I didn't believe that the K through 12 schools were like training the future workers. Of course I did. That's exactly what they're doing. But my beef is he wasn't talking about the family stuff. That's why James Lindsay pisses me off. He could have stayed in his lane and focused on education instead of going full Gnostic sex cult. Indeed. Indeed. The people are the comrades.
We cannot free the university from the exigencies of the market by calling for the return of the public education system. We live out the terminus of the very market logic upon which that system was founded. The only autonomy that we can hope to attain exists beyond capitalism. What this means for our struggle is that we can't go backward. The old student struggles are the relics of a vanished world. In the 1960s, as the post-war boom was just beginning to unravel, radicals within the confines of the university understood that another world was possible. Fed up with technocratic management wanting to break the chains of a conformist society and rejecting alienated work as unnecessary in an age of abundance, students tried to align themselves with radical sections of the working class, but their mode of radicalization, too tenuously connected to the economic logic of capitalism, prevented that alignment from taking true hold. Because their resistance to the Vietnam War focalized critique upon capitalism as a colonial war machine, but insufficiently upon its exploitation of domestic labor, students were easily...
Okay, so I just want to listen to this part again because they're talking about the Vietnam War and the protests that were happening around the Vietnam War. And remember, I think what they're doing at Columbia is trying to recreate Kent State, which happened during the protests of the Vietnam War. So I just want to listen to that one more time.
Economic logic of capitalism prevented that alignment from taking true hold. Because their resistance to the Vietnam War focalized critique upon capitalism as a colonial war machine, but insufficiently upon its exploitation of domestic labor, students were easily split off from a working class facing different problems. In the twilight era of the post-war boom, The university was not subsumed by capital to the degree that it is now, and students were not as intensively proletarianized by debt and a devastated labor market. And that is why our struggle is fundamentally different. The poverty of student life has become terminal. There is no promised exit. If the economic crisis of the 1970s emerged to break the back of the political crisis of the 60s, the fact that today the economic crisis precedes the coming political uprising means we may finally supersede the co-optation and neutralization of those past struggles. There will be no return to normal.
Does James Lindsay read stuff like this? I'm asking. I haven't listened to his content in like 3 years. Does he read newer, like Marxist, anarchist thought like this? Does anyone know? Because like the Mary Nardini gang, that came in the what was it, like the early 2000s? This came around the same time, around that same time where like Occupy Wall Street. The reason I'm asking is there really seems to be like kind of like underground cult like anarchist leftist philosophy that was published around the same time as like Occupy Wall Street that we're finding in this anarchist library stuff, where this to me, based on all of the listening that I've done to the left over the last 3 years, this stuff to me seems to be the most relevant in terms of what I seeing show up in the real world. So it's kind of like people, when people get into leftist circles, they get into like this insular environment where they're only reading books that like are written for socialists, and they're only reading philosophy that's written for socialists, and they start to get into these underground communities where they read all this weird shit. And I guess I'm wondering, has James Lindsay actually read the real shit? Like the weird stuff, the underground stuff, the cult stuff, not just the academic journals, because I'm starting to kind of develop a hypothesis that this stuff and a lot of the stuff that Human Centipede's been sending me, because he's been sending me some weird stuff. But it all seems to me to be the same things that we're hearing on Socialism Saturday. It seems to be like the same types of themes that we're hearing in these leftist trainings. And I'm wondering if this sort of thing, this kind of like cult, like anarcho-communist, queer, like cult stuff is actually more influential of where today's modern left is in terms of what were the people who were running Occupy Wall Street reading. They were probably reading this stuff because they were anarchists. What are the queer Marxists reading? Probably this stuff because the queer Marxists are anarchists. What, like, that's the question I have. If anyone has an answer for me, I would, yeah. He has not read the underground stuff on his podcast. It's all academic. I'm starting to develop a hypothesis that how do I phrase this? This is going to be poorly worded, okay? Because I'm kind of thinking through this in real time. So forgive me if I don't say this perfectly. I'm not suggesting the academic literature was not influential on today's Marxists. What I am going to suggest is this underground cult stuff that started coming out in the late 2000s is possibly more influential on today's Marxist activists, the ones that are actually pushing all the crazy ideas, the gender ideology, the critical race theory, the abolish the police, like all that stuff, all the stuff that we see in the world. I think that this stuff has probably been more directly influential on them than the academic stuff. And it's not to say that this stuff wasn't influenced by the academic stuff, but there's there's a mutated strand of Marxism. James Lindsay is looking at the original strand of Marxism This stuff is the mutated strand of Marxism. Queer Marxism is a mutated strand of Marxism. It's funny, when I did the interview with the socialists on Saturday, I was talking to them a little bit beforehand, and I mentioned queer Marxism to them. And these are the socialists that I interviewed on Saturday are Bolsheviks. They're like old school economic communists, okay? And they said to me, queer Marxism is not real Marxism. Well, that's going to be news to the queer Marxists that are trying to co-opt their movement right now. But like, queer Marxism is the mutated strand. Cultural Marxism is the mutated strand. This stuff is the mutated strand. The college protests are the mutated strand. Are you guys picking up what I'm putting down? Like, does this make sense? So you have like these very traditional kind of like economic Marxists, like the Bolsheviks, that just want to, they think it's all about securing the factories and all that, as if most production actually takes place in factories right now. The real problem that we're dealing with are the more cultural Marxists, but the cultural Marxists, I'm sorry, they're not all fucking Maoists. Now, I'm not saying that there's not links to that, but this idea that everything that we're seeing in the world as a direct connection to like Maoism, I just don't think is true. It's starting to ring more true to me that there are certainly influences that are coming from the more traditional spaces, but at some point, something mutated and went off fucking kilter. Antifa identifies as anarcho-communists. And so what we see in the cultural stuff and all the people causing us problems is this mutated strand of far leftists that cannot be accurately predicted or accurately summed up if you're just looking at the old school philosophy and the literature and all that, because they splintered. Did I just make all that up? Does any of that make sense to people?
We seek to push the university struggle to its limits. Though we denounce the privatization of the university and its authoritarian system of governance, we do not seek structural reforms. We demand not a free university, but a free society. A free university in the midst of a capitalist society is like a reading room in a prison.
When they say free society, they mean a society free of capitalism. I want to go back and listen to that again.
We seek to push the university struggle to its limits. Though we denounce the privatization of the university and its authoritarian system of governance, we do not seek structural reforms. We demand not a free university, but a free society. A free university in the midst of a capitalist society is like a reading room in a prison. It serves only as a distraction from the misery of daily life. Instead, we seek to channel the anger of the dispossessed students and workers into a declaration of war. We must begin by preventing the university from functioning. We must interrupt the normal flow of
What? What was that? We must prevent the university from functioning. What does that sound like is happening right now? We seek to channel the students into preventing the university from functioning.
Only as a distraction from the misery of daily life. Instead, we seek to channel the anger of the dispossessed students and workers into a declaration of war. We must begin by preventing the university from functioning. We must interrupt the normal flow of bodies and things that bring work and class to a halt. We will blockade. We will occupy. And we will take what's ours.
They believe that by preventing the university from functioning, by occupying the university through maybe things like encampments, what they're trying to do is like basically decolonize the university. Am I right about that? Like, they believe that by preventing the university from functioning, in the normal way in which the university is just supporting capitalism by training the next generation of like proletarian workers or whatever, by preventing the university from functioning, they're going to be able to decolonize that particular. Am I right about that? Am I making that up? Let's listen again. We're going to go back a little bit. Though we denounce the privatization of the university, remember capitalism is defined as private property ownership. All right, let's start there.
To push the university struggle to its limits. Though we denounce the privatization of the university and its authoritarian system of governance, we do not seek structural reforms. We demand not a free university, but a free society. A free university in the midst of a capitalist society is like a reading room.
They're trying to disrupt capitalism by preventing the university from functioning. This is what it is. Okay, so maybe it's not about decolonizing the university so much, although it certainly could lead to that. So you know how social reproduction theory means that if they can disrupt the nuclear family, then they can disrupt capitalism, because the nuclear family is the production factory for the future generation of proletarian workers. So by disrupting the nuclear family, they can disrupt capitalism because of in social reproduction theory, essentially what that means for people who are new is that social systems will continue to reproduce themselves until they're disrupted. So if you have a social system that's reproducing capitalism, which is what the left wants to abolish, they need to disrupt that system in order to disrupt capitalism. So what they're saying is, by disrupting the university, by preventing the normal function of the university, by blockading the university, by occupying the university, it's another way of trying to disrupt the social system in order to disrupt capitalism. Because if the university is not producing the trained workforce for the working world, then the capitalist system will cease to function. And by the way, it's not a stretch to say that by turning the university into centers where you're basically teaching activism in all of their classes, which is what the university is now, that's exactly what it is, you're also disrupting the system that way, because the university is not training the students in order to be productive members of society anymore. We are quite literally seeing the result of a university education in the world right now. The university is not training the students to be good little capitalists. The university is training the students to be activists. And so you could even argue that that very act of transitioning the university from being something that maybe used to be a productive outlet to being something that only trains the future generation of activists, you could even argue that that is a disruption to the social system itself. I'm going to go back one more time. Sorry, I interrupted. We're actually going to listen to this now.
Though we denounce the privatization of the university and its authoritarian system of governance, we do not seek structural reforms. We demand not a free university, but a free society. A free university in the midst of a capitalist society is like a reading room in a prison. It serves only as a distraction from the misery of daily life.
Rottweiler, and with the super chat, I think you're right. Marxism started to mutate when they adopted postmodernism, so queer Marxism was born. The Maoist elements are the method, the student unease. It's a cross-pollination of several ideas. This is like how COVID, I'm about to make a horrible analogy, forgive me. This is like how COVID was like the mix between a bat and a pig. It's like that movie. What was the movie? Contagion. Did anyone see that movie? So I love that movie. Contagion is about a worldwide plague, just like COVID, not really. But in the movie Contagion, basically what happened is a bat shit on a pig, and then the pig was killed and served up in a restaurant, and patient zero for the worldwide pandemic in Contagion ate the pig, And that was the start of the worldwide plague, because a bat and a pig in a random happenstance of circumstance just came together at exactly the right time, and it mutated this virus that almost killed off all of humanity. So it was like a cross-pollination of species that went horribly wrong. So I think in the hypothesis that I'm starting to come up with is like the current Marxist activists are a cross-pollination of many things, but also including this cult stuff that we're now listening to, that other so it's like it's not to say the philosophy wasn't there. It's not to say that Maoism has no influence. It's not to say that the Marxist philosophy isn't there, but it's like it's this weird, it's like Marx and Maoism is like the pig, but this cult stuff, this anarchist stuff is like the bat that came in and shit on the pig, and now everyone's eating the goddamn pig that has been infected with this virus that has taken over everything. And what people don't understand is they're all looking at the pig and they're going, the pig, the pig, the pig. No, it wasn't just the fucking pig. It was also the bat. And the bat is this. Do I have that right? I see it more like a selective cross of several plants in order to create the perfect venomous plant. Well, we're basically saying the same thing, Rottweiler. We're just saying it in different ways. And Human Centipede is saying this is more culturally relevant to kids that were in college 10 years ago. It's also probably more culturally relevant to kids in college today, I would think. Yeah, this is gain of function Marxism. That's actually an interesting term for it. Holy shit.
Instead, we seek to channel the anger of the dispossessed students and workers into a declaration of war. We must begin by preventing the university from functioning. We must interrupt the normal flow of bodies and things that bring work and class to a halt. We will blockade. We will occupy. And we will take what's ours. Rather than viewing such disruptions as obstacles to dialogue and mutual understanding, we see them as what we have to say, as how we are to be understood. This is the only meaningful position to take when crises lay bare the opposing interests at the foundation of society. Calls for unity are fundamentally empty. There is no common ground between those who uphold the status quo and those who seek to destroy it. The university struggle is one among many, one sector where a new cycle of refusal and insurrection has begun.
Hang on. He just said there is no common ground between those who uphold the status quo and those who seek to destroy the status quo. This is why I say the negotiations between the students and the administration at Columbia, they're not real negotiations. It's basically the students just buying time to be able to get more people, to be able to build out their encampment, to be able to set up systems and do training and do all that. But by the way, guys, the students on Columbia's campus are literally doing training classes on how to protest, what to do when you get arrested, how to talk to the media. There are fucking seminars about this on Columbia's encampment right now. And so this farce of a negotiation with the administration, there is no demand that the university can meet that will not result in another demand. Even if they say, okay, we're going to completely divest from Israel, which they're not going to do because Israel would eat their ass for it. But even if they did, there would be another demand after that. And the reason is there is no common ground between those who seek to uphold the status quo, the administration, and those who seek to destroy it.
There is no common ground between those who uphold the status quo and those who seek to destroy it. The university struggle is one among many, one sector where a new cycle of refusal and insurrection has begun, in workplaces, in neighborhoods, and slums. All of our futures are linked, and so our movement will have to join with these others, breaching the walls of the university compounds and spilling into the streets. In recent weeks, Bay Area public school teachers, BART employees, and unemployed have threatened demonstrations and strikes. Each of these movements responds to a different facet of capitalism's reinvigorated attack on the working class in a moment of crisis. Viewed separately, each appears small, nearsighted without hope of success, but taken together, however, they suggest the possibility of widespread refusal and resistance. Our task is to make plain the common contradictions that, like a hidden water table, feed into each struggle. We have seen this kind of upsurge in the recent past, a rebellion that starts in the classrooms and radiates outwards to encompass the whole of society. Just 2 years ago, the anti-CPE movement in France, combating a new law that enabled employers to fire young workers without cause, brought huge numbers out into the streets. High school and university students, teachers, parents, rank-and-file union members, and unemployed youth from the banlieues found themselves.
Guys, guess what? Breaking news. I have 2 pieces of breaking news. Number 1, Kyle Seraphin says that the next drop he's going to do on James O'Keefe is coming soon. So I'm looking forward to that. Number 2, the co-founder of the American Conservative magazine just subscribed to me on Twitter, which I think is a good sign because obviously he's paying attention to something I'm saying, and that can only be good. So I have Harmeet Dillon subscribed to me on Twitter, and now I have the founder of the American Conservative magazine subscribed to me on Twitter. And I'll say this too, American Conservative has actually been a pretty, it's been one of the places that has actually covered my work more than most conservative outlets. And so I've always liked them. They actually covered autistic sex education. They've covered some other things that I've done. And so shout out to you, Scott. I appreciate the support. Thank you. Share my stuff with conservatives. They need to hear it, bro.
Together on the same side of the barricades. This solidarity was often fragile, however. The riots of immigrant youth in the suburbs and university students in the city centers never merged, and at times tensions flared between the two groups. French students saw through the illusion of the university as a place of refuge and enlightenment, and acknowledged that they were merely being trained to work. They took to the streets as workers, protesting their precarious futures. Their position tore down partitions between the schools and the workplaces and immediately elicited the support of many wage workers and unemployed people in a mass gesture of proletarian refusal. As the movement developed, it manifested a growing tension between revolution and reform. Its form was more radical than its content. While the rhetoric of the student leaders focused merely on a return to the status quo, the actions of the youth, the riots, the cars overturned and set on fire, the blockades of roads and railways, the waves of occupations that shut down high schools and universities, announced the extent of the new generation's disillusionment and rage. Despite all of this, however, the movement quickly disintegrated when the CPE law was eventually dropped. While the most radical segment of the movement sought to expand the rebellion into a general revolt against capitalism, they could not secure significant enough support, and the demonstrations, occupations, and blockades dwindled and then eventually died. Ultimately, the movement was unable to transcend the limitations of reformism. The Greek uprising of December 2008 broke through many of these limitations and marked the beginning of a new cycle of class struggle. Initiated by students in response to the murder of an Athens youth by the police, the uprising consisted of weeks of rioting, looting, and occupations of universities, union offices, and television stations. Entire financial and shopping districts burned, and what the movement lacked in numbers it made up for in its geographical breadth, spreading from city to city to encompass the whole of Greece. As in France, it was an uprising of youth for whom the economic crisis represented a total negation of their future. Students, precarious workers, and immigrants were the protagonists, and they were able to achieve a level of unity that far surpassed the fragile solidarities of the anti-CPE movement. But just as significantly, they made almost no demands. While of course some demonstrators sought to reform the police system or to critique specific government policies, in general they asked for nothing at all from the government, from the university, the workplaces, or the police. not because they considered this a better strategy, but because they wanted nothing that any of these institutions could offer. Here, content aligned with form, whereas the optimistic slogans that appeared everywhere in French demonstrations jarred with the images of burning cars and broken glass. In Greece, the rioting was the obvious means to begin to enact the destruction of an entire political and economic system. Ultimately, the dynamics that created the uprising also established its limits. It was made possible by the existence of a sizable radical infrastructure in urban areas, in particular the Exarchia neighborhood in Athens. The squats, bars, cafes, and social centers frequented by students and immigrant youth created the milieu out of which the uprising emerged. However, this milieu was alien to most middle-aged wage workers who did not see the struggle as their own. Though many expressed solidarity with the rioting youth, they perceived it as a movement of entrance, that is, of a portion of the proletariat that sought entrance to the labor market but was not formally employed in full-time job. That uprising then, strong in the schools and the immigrant suburbs, did not spread to those workplaces. Our task in the current struggle will be to make clear the contradiction between form and content, and to create the conditions for the transcendence of reformist demands and the implementation of a truly communist content. As the unions and student and faculty groups push their various issues, quote unquote, we must increase the tension until it is clear that we want something else entirely. We must constantly expose the incoherence of demands for democratization and transparency. What good is it to have the right to see how intolerable things are, or to elect those who will screw us? We must leave behind the culture of student activism with its moralistic mantras of nonviolence and its fixation on single-issue causes. The only success with which we can be content is the abolition of the capitalist mode of production and the certainty of immiseration and death which it promises for the 21st century.
And remember, the universities are part of the capitalist mode of production. The nuclear family is a part of the capitalist mode of production. But keep saying it's all about anti-Semitism, 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 anti-Semitism. No, it's not. It's about abolishing capitalism.
All of our actions must push us towards communization, that is, the reorganization of society according to a logic of free giving and receiving, and the immediate abolition of the wage, the value form, compulsory labor, and exchange. Occupation will be a critical tactic in our struggle, but we must resist the tendency to use it in a reformist way.
Occupation will be a critical tactic in our struggle. What are the college students doing right now?
The different strategic uses of occupation became clear this past January when students occupied a building at the New School in New York. A group of friends.
By the way, literally right this second, there are students occupying a building at the New School in New York. So this was in 2009, but what he just said is literally happening right now. One of the protests is at the New School, and they literally set up tents in the executive office building in New York. The pictures of it are on my Twitter. Just listen again.
A logic of free giving and receiving, and the immediate abolition of the wage, the value form, compulsory labor, and exchange. Occupation will be a critical tactic in our struggle, but we must resist the tendency to use it in a reformist way. The different strategic uses of occupation became clear this past January when students occupied a building at the New School in New York. A group of friends, mostly graduate students, decided to take over the Student Center and claim it as a liberated space for students and the public.
Same thing.
Soon others joined in, but many of them preferred to use the action as leverage to win reforms, in particular to oust the school's president. These differences came to a head as the occupation unfolded. While the student reformers were focused on leaving the building with a tangible concession from the administration, others shunned demands entirely. They saw the point of occupation as the creation of a momentary opening in capitalist time and space.
The reformers, who have now basically been excommunicated from the far left, because reform, in which you have a negotiation about your demands and then there's like a negotiation and there's some concessions made, that's now considered to be a betrayal of far left radical principles. So what we're seeing on Columbia's campus is not reformism. This is why I keep saying those negotiations with the administration are all trash. Because what they're trying to do is create a momentary opening in capitalist time and space. The occupation is the decolonization of the space. And it might just be a temporary decolonization because they know it's going to go back eventually, but that's not the point. The point is the creation of a momentary opening in capitalist time and space. Let's listen again. So what they're describing here is like when they occupied that building at the new school, basically there were more people who wanted to do reformism by getting the administration to make concessions, but just keep in mind that that does not exist at Columbia.
In exchange, occupation will be a critical tactic in our struggle, but we must resist the tendency to use it in a reformist way. The different strategic uses of occupation became clear this past January when students occupied a building at the New School in New York. A group of friends, mostly graduate students, decided to take over the Student Center and claim it as a liberated space for students and the public. Soon others joined in, but many of them preferred to use the action as leverage to win reforms, in particular to oust the school's president. These differences came to a head as the occupation unfolded. While the student reformers were focused on leaving the building with a tangible concession from the administration, others shunned demands entirely. They saw the point of occupation as the creation of a momentary opening in capitalist time and space, a rearrangement that sketched the contours of a new society. We side with this anti-reformist position. While we know these free zones will be partial and transitory, the tensions they expose between the real and the possible can push the struggle in a more radical direction.
Oh my god, Human Centipede, you outdid yourself with this one, bro. Really, I know we got a couple minutes left of this, but can we all just give Human Centipede a giant round of applause for digging this one up from the Anarchist library? Because like this is everything. This is everything that's going on right now. The point of the occupation is not that they think they're going to get concessions. It's not that they even think they're going to be able to keep the land forever. The point of the occupation is to create a public distinction that something else is possible. Holy shit. Again, I know I'm going back and listening to this a couple times, but I just really think that this is important. One more time.
Occupation will be a critical tactic in our struggle, but we must resist the tendency to use it in a reformist way. The different strategic uses of occupation became clear this past January when students occupied a building at the New School in New York. A group of friends, mostly graduate students, decided to take over the Student Center and claim it as a liberated space for students and the public. Soon others joined in, but many of them preferred to use the action as leverage to win reforms, in particular to oust the school's president. These differences came to a head as the occupation unfolded. While the student reformers were focused on leaving the building with a tangible concession from the administration, others shunned demands entirely. They saw the point of occupation as the creation of a momentary opening in capitalist time and space, a rearrangement that sketched the contours of a new society. We side with this anti-reformist position. While we know these free zones will be partial and transitory, the tensions they expose between the real and the possible can push the struggle in a more radical direction. We intend to employ this tactic until it becomes generalized. In 2001, the first Argentine piqueteros suggested the form people's struggle there should take, road blockades, which brought to a halt the circulation of goods from place to place. Within months, this tactic spread across the country without any formal coordination between groups. In the same way, repetition can establish occupation.
Hang on, I just want to get a couple super chats. I want to say we're definitely coining the term the gain of function Marxism. I think that was like that was a revelation from today. For you, Human Centipede, job well done. Yes, Human Centipede must be protected at all costs. Not only is he one of our primary meme makers against James Lindsay, he also is digging up just like the most relevant stuff, and we need to listen to all of it. Jenny's getting inky with it, says, do you think admins of the school are helping to make that space? Here's what I think. I think that the leadership of the school is not the leadership of the school are pissed off at the students right now. I promise you that. The leaders of the school are like the hoity-toity, like they just want to maintain their status and they make a ton of money. And so I don't think that the leaders, like the executives, like the Columbia president, the board of trustees, any of that are on the student side at all. They're the neoliberals, right? But I think when we're talking about lower level admins, just like staff at the university that are helping the students out or doing a favor for them here or there, or the faculty is absolutely on the student side, but like the lower level admin people are also probably on the student side. Now they're not saying it. They're not going into their jobs and like announcing it, but it's kind of like students have jobs at universities. So students get jobs within all the office. I used to work in higher education for 10 years for people who don't know. I was like in a professional position. Like students work in all the different offices at the university. So all of the students that are on campus have professionals at the university that they're like friends with or that they know or that they're friendly with or that have mentored them. And I would bet you that when we're looking at like the director level down, and there are most of the staff at universities are director level and down, I bet you a lot of those people are helping out the students. Like a lot of them. A lot of them are probably on the student side. So yeah, I do think the admins of the school are making it happen, but I don't think it's the uppermost level. The highest level, the ones that are getting called out by Congress right now, those are the neoliberals that just desperately want their university to stay in one piece. And they just want everything to be nice because they're taking home a fat paycheck. But lower level, yeah. And remember, the faculty at these universities now are the students from 10 years ago, when this was written. Dr. K, I've just gotten word that Argentina saw a massive protest for free socialized education. Rumors say it might be in solidarity with Colombia. After all, there's tons of commies there too. Well, we'll keep an eye out on that, Rottweiler. They seem to be talking about Argentina right now too. I'm sure it's just a coincidence.
As an instinctive and immediate method of revolt taken up both inside and outside the university. We have seen a new wave of takeovers in the US over the last year, both at universities and workplaces. New School and NYU, as well as the workers at Republic Windows Factory in Chicago, who fought the closure of their factory by taking it over. Now it is our turn. To accomplish our goals, we cannot rely on those groups which position themselves as our representatives. We are willing to work with unions and student associations when we find it useful, but we do not recognize their authority. We must act on our own behalf directly, without mediation. We must break with any groups that seek to limit the struggle by telling us to go back to work, go back to class, to negotiate, to reconcile. This was also the case in France. The original calls for protests were made by the national high school and university student associations and by some of the trade unions. Eventually, as the representative groups urged calm, others forged ahead. And in Greece, the unions revealed their counter-revolutionary character by canceling
That's a good idea,
strikes and
H.
calling
Tom.
for restraint.
I love that.
As an alternative to being herded by representatives, we call on students and workers to organize themselves across trade lines. We urge undergraduates, teaching assistants, lecturers, faculty, service workers, and all staff to begin meeting together to discuss their situation. The more we begin talking to one another and finding our common interests, the more difficult it becomes for the administration to pit us against each other in a hopeless competition for the dwindling resources. The recent struggles at NYU and the New School suffered from the absence of these deep bonds.
NYU.
If there's a lesson to be learned from them, is that we must build dense networks of solidarity based upon the recognition of a shared enemy. These networks not only make us resistant to recuperation and neutralization.
The dense networks of solidarity we're seeing play out at Columbia right now, because there are all these socialist groups that are helping the students at Columbia, like the Party for Socialism and Liberation, like the People's Forum, both groups that we have watched on this channel before. I think they're saying the DSA is involved too. I haven't seen the DSA be as involved in this, but the Party for Socialism and Liberation is like very involved in this. So when they're saying like these dense networks, this is actually playing out. More time.
That we must build dense networks of solidarity based upon the recognition of a shared enemy. These networks not only make us resistant to recuperation and neutralization, but also allow us to establish new kinds of collective bonds. And these bonds, these collective bonds, are the real basis of our struggle. We will see you at the barricades.
Wow. Wow. Holy shit. Well, I think that that was a really good use of our time. I think that was an excellent use of our time to listen to that whole thing, to deconstruct it, I mean, it's just like, Human Centipede was not wrong. That's incredibly relevant. We got a lot out of this one today. So I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me. Now, I do want to say that I do still want to do this Kent State thing tonight. What I want to do is I want to take a little bit of a break. I'm going to go make some dinner. I want everyone to take a break. Go do what you got to do. And then maybe around 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, maybe something like that, we can come and watch a Kent State documentary. Does that sound good to everyone? And we can find one. If anyone has any favorite Kent State documentaries that you guys know about, please DM them to me on Twitter, get them to me on Discord, whatever works best for you. He was saying create networks of students and admins. Well, we're seeing that happen too at Columbia with the faculty and the admins. I think you're probably right about that, Human Centipede. Thank you. So what we're going to do, guys, and let's just say 9 o'clock. I'll say 9 o'clock to give you guys a time. It might be a little later than that, but if it's a little later than that, I will post an update for that. Just because there's I have some clips I want to make. I have some other things I want to do. So let's just plan for 9 p.m. for the Kent State stuff. And we'll come back and we'll watch a documentary about that. That was in 2009. So relatively recent, not too long ago though. Eastern time. So basically almost 2 hours. So it's 7:15 p.m. here currently. I'm saying I want to start the Kent State documentary around 9 p.m. So a little less than 2 hours. So guys, I will be back. And as a reminder, please make sure you subscribe to the channel, set those notifications so you know when I go live, especially for late night streams. And please make sure you head over to my Substack, Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com, and subscribe. And remember, when you sign up as a member for $8 a month or $80 a year, you're going to get access to today's spy stream where we went inside a live queer liberation training. We're also doing the same thing tomorrow. So there's a day 2 of spy stream. So perfect time to sign up as a member because you'll get to join us tomorrow for the live queer liberation training that's going to be starting around 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, runs till about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I will be sending out access credential information tomorrow morning for people who are doing that. But I'm going to go grab some dinner and then we're going to come back and watch Kent State. Thank you guys for hanging out. I appreciate the support. We'll see you soon. Bye.